Your job in your NHS consultant interview is to show the panel how awesome you are, but I know that it feels awkward and nobody likes a bragger. So how can you sell yourself well in your interview? Well, that's what we're going to look at in this video. The first thing is to think about a framework for how to choose your unique selling point. Your unique selling points are what sets you apart from the average candidate applying. These will be things that you've done that's a bit different, a bit off the regular path that help you stand out. And most candidates assume that they know what the panel wants to hear. And as you'll soon discover, what the panel wants to hear about from you is almost never what you originally thought they wanted. So as a result, these interview candidates often overinvest in the wrong ideas. They just focus on the initial few things that come to mind and they don't bother to look further. But to avoid this, I encourage you to use my USP selection framework. And this USP selection framework, it flips the process on its head. So instead of starting with the things that come to mind immediately, you go through it systematically. Ask yourself the following questions. What did I do that was off the path in my training? Where did I work that I got the most from? Did I work overseas? Did I do any subspecialty roles? Did I work with any big names in my specialty? Have I completed any clinical courses? Have I published anything? Have I presented anywhere? Have I run teaching sessions? Have I completed any postgraduate courses? Have I completed a QIP? Have I completed a full audit? Have I made any changes? Have I reviewed any guidelines, answered any complaints, been involved in investigating an SI? Do I have any experience outside of the NHS? Have I had interactions with the exec or led committees or been involved in a business case? These are some of the questions that you can ask yourself, and that's how the USP choosing process should go. Start going through these and add more questions as you find them, and you'll start to see what comes up for you. Don't skip them. Write all the things down that come to you. And part of the process is going to be reviewing them and then deciding which ones are your strongest. But the key thing for you is don't settle on the first things that come to mind. Keep digging. You might start to feel like you're reeling off a list when you're sharing your USPs or telling them about yourself. So how do you stop sounding like a robot reeling off a list? I wanted to share something that I've prepared. It'll help you get started with your consultant interview prep. And if you'd like to get a sneak peek at some interview questions, I put together a list of the 15 most commonly asked questions this year in NHS consultant interviews. You can download them for free at the link in the video, and it's also in the description underneath the video too. Well, the way that you can stop everything sounding like you're just reeling off a list and you're being a robot is to make it more specific. Because when it comes to tell me about yourself, many interview candidates struggle to be specific. They just list their achievements, and it means that you aren't making the most of your skills, and you miss out on the golden opportunity of this first question when they ask, take me through your CV or tell me about yourself. But luckily, I've got a very easy framework that you can use to help. So every time you start saying a line in an interview answer, I want you to stop yourself if it's too general. So for example, say you do teaching. So you might say, I've delivered several teaching sessions. You need to stop yourself here. It's too general. So you might know who you've taught and where, but the panel has no clue. Your teaching session could be 2 learners in a coffee shop while you're having a drink, or it could be 700 people in a keynote at the global conference of your specialty. So ask yourself some questions to help you make it more specific. Can you include numbers? Like how many students, how many sessions, how many teaching topics, how many hours was the teaching, how many speakers did you coordinate? Numbers help add specificity. Secondly, can you include names? Who did you teach? Where did you teach? What was the program? What was the name of the university? Names help make it real and add weight. Next, can you use examples? What was the most notable teaching session? What was it that made it notable? What did you learn by doing it? What were the challenges? When you add specifics, it helps the panel really visualize it. So every time you make a statement, ask yourself, how can I make this more specific? It's going to give you clarity as to how exactly to share your USPs or your ideas. Next, you need to think about what it is that they would want to know. Well, they want to know the specifics so that they can understand how impressive what you're sharing is. I organised a conference with 300 attendees and 60 speakers that ran 3 streams over 2 days. I coordinated the registrar teaching for 3 hours a week, every week for 12 months to 60 registrars each session, and I invited 3 speakers for each session. I was the PI of a research project that was a randomised control trial across multiple sites and recruited over 4,000 patients in a 12-month period, and I personally recruited 300 of them. I analysed the data and led the team that wrote up the results. They were published in The Lancet, and I was the first author. Again, notice even though how you might technically be sharing the same thing as saying I got a publication, when it's general, the panel actually will have no idea what you did. So whenever you start to plan your answer, remember the panel. Think about why they've asked you the question and what they want to know. One thing to avoid when choosing your USPs is avoid personality traits or avoid collections of things. So each USP is one thing, it's not lots of things. So your USP isn't, I'm interested in education, I've taught on this course, I've taught on that course, I've put together this teaching. That's not your USP. Your USP is one specific teaching example that you think is a great project. Like you organized a 3-day conference with 600 people and 28 speakers, and you had 3 concurrent sessions. Or your USP is, I did a specific audit where I was the lead. We had a team of 10 people. We reduced the rates of whatever from 80% to 60%. And this had X, Y, and Z impact, and we got it published. That's your USP. It's not, I've done a number of audits, including one about this and one about that and one about that. So the reason for doing a deep dive in your USPs is so that you know them well, because these are your strongest things. You want to bring them into as many questions as you can. And the more you think about them, the more angles you will see, the more examples you'll pull from there. Similarly, don't use personality traits for your USP. Your USP isn't that you're a good communicator or that you're a team player or that you're reliable or enthusiastic. The reason these aren't USPs is because I could ask any interview candidate who is going for a consultant interview, and they will also think they're a good communicator, a good team player, they're reliable, because that's what we all think about ourselves. But it's very hard to make that specific. So that's not a USP, that's just a personality trait. Find your USPs as one specific project, strength, skill, experience, and then do a deep dive to think about how you can explain that as specifically as possible. And then spend longer thinking about it. So thinking, what did I learn when I did this project? What were the challenges? What were the mistakes? Because these will be the examples that you'll be able to use for other interview questions. So now you know how to find what sets you apart from the average candidate. It'll help you to be able to sell yourself well in the interview. But not everything in the interview is directly asked, tell me about yourself. What happens when they ask, tell me about a time when you made a mistake or had a conflict? How can you choose solid examples and not examples that make you look bad, or even worse, examples that make you unemployable? I'm going to show you exactly how to choose solid gold examples in this next video, and you can watch it right here.